A special YouTube channel representation over a special subscriber milestone. A special YouTube channel milestone, subscriber milestone representation. As one dare might say, it is worth the presentation. A special YouTube channel subscriber milestone representation. A special celebratory representation of subscriber presentations representing. Well, this is certainly another special channel representation. Hello to you, hello everybody, hello. Oh my goodness. And yes. Sorry, wait a moment. Yes, okay, now it's okay. But yes, in this very video, this one is a special representation because of something special. Well, for those of you, in case you didn't know, my best friend in the whole entire world, David Scott, that is, David Scott, aka Wheels, aka David's Collective Videography, his content has, wow, it has shot. His channel subscription count has just shot since the last time I checked his subscriber numbers. Last time I checked it, he had only about 55 subscribers short of what he's currently got now. His channel, very recently, at some point this month in June of 2024, his channel hit more than 760 subscribers. So overall, earlier this month in June of 2024, David's content hit well over 700 subscribers. I mean, wow! Well done, David. You're making great success with your YouTubing popularity. Yes. Honestly, David started YouTubing only back in 2021, which was when we first met. But I'll get to the story fairly shortly. And honestly, I'm so impressed with how his channel has evolved, and the popularity has just increased in the nearly 3 years he's been YouTubing. I mean, I really didn't think he would hit more than 700 subscribers by 2024. I really thought that was just purely imaginative thinking, that he would hit this milestone by this year. But I think he's pretty much on course to hitting 950 to 1,000 subscribers by 2025. I certainly think he's on the, really, at the current rate his subscription popularity is increasing. I think at this rate he's going to be, he's en route to hitting big success with subscription counts. I certainly think so. I mean, David does not at the moment do live stream content or anything like that, but there's certainly always a remote possibility that David could take up doing live stream content. But we shall see what David himself decides, shall we? And certainly will I always invite him on a live stream one day in the future if he ever wanted to go on. But never mind if not. And, honestly, and David, I couldn't be more fortunate to have him in my lifetime, and there's a big story to share on this. Back in 2021, we got a cat. We got a beautiful Maine Coon kitten, who is now a very great, big, huge, fluffy, gingerish white great Maine Coon kitten we know and love as of today. She needs no introduction, Daphne the cat. And so, sometime after we got Daphne, I took videos featuring her in them, Daphne herself. And the more videos I took featuring Daphne in them, eventually they got some viewership. Certain viewership began to steadily increase bit by bit and all that. And before long, there was a certain video I did, and then I got the comment, David had commented, in the evening hours of the 1st of July of 2021, I got the comment from David. He was like, such a lovely little cat. And I'll have to link that very video for those of you who want to see it. And that was a video of when Daphne was just a kitten. So I've pretty much taken videos of her life from when we got her as a kitten, because I've got a playlist of Daphne videos, which started from when she was a little kitten to eventually to the recent videos I heard in the present day. So it's from kitten to when she grew up into a full-grown cat, a huge Maine Coon she is today. Well, she's partially Maine Coon because it was her late father who was a Maine Coon, but her mother was not Maine Coon, however. So you could say she's partially Maine Coon, that is. But does have really a lot of Maine Coon features when you see her on video. And she does have a lot of the Maine Coon traits, to tell you all things. So, honestly, and that was, when looking back now, on the 1st of July of 2021, it's one of the, little did I realise that it was going to lead to something extraordinary in the future, you know. And then sometime after I first heard from David, I ended up hearing from him quite a few more times, sporadically after that. And the more times we heard from him, it eventually began to develop into a mutual friendship, what have you. And then I heard he was to be attending the Worthing Bus Rally of 2021. And I was like, I'm going there too! How wonderful! And before long, less than a month later, over 3.5 weeks later, both David and myself, we met. We both met. It was right at the ending conclusion point of the Worthing Bus Rally itself, and we conversed in a conversation together. And as we conversed together, I was like, honestly, it was a valuable moment. It was certainly a very big, valuable moment when we conversed together. Sorry about that. And things. And apparently, and it was me that got him into YouTubing. I only just gave a little suggestion, if he ever thought about it, and he took off with the YouTubing. Just like a click. Took off with it. And then before long, and then he recommended to me, shortly after the Worthing Bus Rally was over, he recommended Tinkers Park to me. And this was when something extraordinary happened. 2 weeks later, I went to Tinkers Park. Because the first time I went to Tinkers Park was back in 2021. And little did I realise I was walking into something extraordinary. It was something very, very extraordinary I was walking into indeed. And, honestly, it changed, and little did I know it was going to change my life drastically, completely. Because first attending Tinkers Park began the early onset of my affinity for event attending, be that a vintage rally event attending, vintage vehicular event attending, and classic car event attending. And then we met again in August of 2021. We met twice in August of 2021. I couldn't go to Hellingly in 2021 because I had I couldn't go back in 2021, but I managed to go in 2022 and 2023 on the other hand. But and all that, so but I had an honesty. And then we met again in September of 2021, shortly before David went to the Lawton Autumn Rally of 2021. But But I couldn't go to Lawton back in 2021, unfortunately, because of other things going on, but nothing bad, but I had important things on at that point. And I couldn't go to the inception of the London to Brighton EV rally event, because I'd obviously had plans that day to go to Stanmer Park, just to happily enjoy the place in itself and explore it. And the Stanmer Park One Garden I was going to, where David stayed behind and watched the event itself. But had I known about the event, I probably would have just watched it with him, but I didn't. But never mind. You know. I mean, I could have just changed my mind and gone to Brighton Madeira Drive and seen the London to Brighton EV Rally 2021, but I didn't, and I couldn't go in 2022 either. But I went in 2023 on the other hand, and of course going to and all that. So, you know, but then we met again in October of 2021 at Hove Park Miniature Railway, the day before the 2021 Hellingly, not Hellingly Festival of Transport, Detling Festival of Transport 2021 event. Again, I could not go to that one, nor could I go to the 2022 or the 2023 Detling events. But I did, however, go to the 2024 one on the other hand. And what's next? Oh yes. Oh yes. We then met again at the Brighton Toy Museum 30th anniversary event 2021 model rail, because they had a model rail event for their 30th anniversary, having been open since 1991. So best part of well over 30 years now. And then the next day, on what would have been my late grandfather Edmund's special birthday anniversary, 17th of October 2021, because his birthday was the 17th of October, where he was born in 1946, so he would have been, 75, if he was still alive in 2021. But if he was alive now, he'd be going on for 78 years of age, that is, as he was sadly only 73, going on for 74 when he died back in February of 2020, as all of you pretty much already know. You know, and it was hard to go on that day. It was hard because of how I was feeling on the anniversary of his what would have been special birthday. But when I went to the event, you know, it at least helped me take my mind off the sadness, so I'm really happy he recommended the event to me, which I did go to, and I was like, this event was just a release of energy from sadness, it really was. And then we did the miniature railway together on an engine what was named Edmund Hannay. Oh yes, you know, named after that of my wonderful Edmund, you know, who meant the world, who really meant a lot to me, and I was very close to him when growing up in childhood. And one of my friends was very close to her grandmother when growing up, in the comparable way to how I was very close to Edmund when growing up. And all that. And what's next? Oh yes, and you know, and it was a few short, and then we met at the final Hove Park Miniature Railway 2023 running day, and then we went to one of the final Eastbourne Miniature Steam Railway open days 2021, and the week later we were at the Veteran Car Run of 2021, and then we didn't see each other for nearly just under 5 months because of the events packing up for the winter seasonal period and all that. And we've been friends since 2021, and we met far more times than I could have personally expected when we met back in 2021, which was when we first met. And the more times we met, the more our friendship began to develop and all the rest of things. And honestly, I mean, really, I am just so fortunate. I'm so terribly fortunate to have David in my lifetime. No, really, I am. You know, the event attending and all the events, the classic card events, which I never knew anything about until 2021, 2022. The ones I've been largely event attending since 2022, some in the summer and the latter autumn and the fall of 2021, which I've been attending ever since summer, autumn, fall 2021, and largely 2022, the events he introduced me to. What it's meant to me was going to these events have helped me with properly overcoming the loss of my wonderful late grandfather Edmund since attending these events, you know, because the loss was a big loss, as I said before. And obviously, since I was very close to Edmund when growing up, he was a very big part of not only my life, he was a big part of my family's lives as well. You know, and losing him, it just devastated all of us, particularly me and all of my family, as said before, and certainly had the worst tolling side effect mentally on my grandmother's mental well-being. You know, she lived, and she's still alive as of now, but she never completely recovered from the loss, unfortunately, and she obviously, understandably and not surprisingly, misses him, really misses him every day since the loss, you know. So that's what the event attending has really meant to me since David introduced it to me. It only took me just under 3 years to open this up to David himself, which I eventually did at the Detling 2024 event, and I opened up about it in a video representing his success, you know, and I think he did thank me quite profusely for it. Well, David, it's a pleasure most sincerely if you did thank me for it. But please, I understand if you need to take the time to thank me for what I said to you when talking about what the event attending truly means to me when you introduced them to me. As I could understand how emotionally moving it must have been for you when I said that, and explained to you what it truly meant and all the rest of things. You know. And the thing David and I have in common is we both love cats. And looking back now, on the 1st and the 25th of July 2021, they're now the happiest days of my life when looking back. One of the happiest days of my life, because little did I know that in the future it would lead to a best friend relationship, because we now, whenever we're talking events together, we're like, oh, how wonderful was the event? Oh, yes. Well, we can see if we could go or not. Oh, yeah. Well, things may be up in the air. Well, it's possible we could. There's always the remote possibility, and so on and so on, you know. And we have, you know, our moments of excellent fun and excellent event conversations, both David and I, and all the rest of it. You know? And that's one of the greatest things we both experienced together in our life and all that. Yes. Honestly. Dave, I mean, I couldn't thank you enough, David, for the events you've introduced me to. Really, I couldn't. It means more than you may initially realise since you introduced them to me. Thank you very, very much, profoundly, David. Really. I think had you not introduced me to the classic card events or the vintage Annie or the vintage vernacular events you spoke to me of back in 2021 and 2022, I'm sure it would have taken me a lot longer to overcome the loss of my wonderful late grandfather Edmund, which was inevitably going to take me a long time to overcome because of the effect it had on not only myself but all of my family. It was going to take all of us time to overcome it. I mean, I may have overcome the loss of my wonderful late grandfather Edmund, but I still always miss him every single day, because before he and my grandmother moved to the Isle of Wight, because it would have been just before my early youth when they moved to the Isle of Wight, because I was 13 when they moved to the Isle of Wight, and from the ages of age 7 until 13, they lived in the Brighton and Hove region. They lived fairly close, so which was fantastic, you know, because myself and my brother, we could meant we could go over far more than once a month, you know, because when they lived in Ramsgate in Kent, before their subsequent move to the Brighton Hove region, we got to see them a lot more at that point. And the times we spent together with not just Edmund but with grandmother too, almost certainly, they were extraordinarily valuable times. I mean, really, they were just valuable. And some of the stories Edmund would share with me were just, I could never forget them for a lifetime. When he and his late brother Paul used to see the steam trains running near the back of their home garden. Paul, who unfortunately died actually a very, very long time before Edmund did, only aged 42 from a heart attack, very sadly. And also Edmund's late father, Bertie, didn't live particularly long either, because he only lived to age 63. He died 50 years ago, 1974, stroke, unfortunately. So, those were sad memories Edmund endured. The loss of his father when he was only in his latter 20s, and the loss of his brother Paul when he was barely even 40 years of age. And that was actually very particularly hard for his mother, who was still alive at this point, devastating. You know, from losing her husband to a stroke, and then losing her son due to a heart attack. Very, very sad. Those were very, very sad moments in his life. And the stroke really disproportionately affected Bertie, because up until he had the stroke he was still working as a teacher, and he was forced into retirement because of a stroke, a full-blown stroke. And then about a year or so, and he just deteriorated rapidly, going downhill health-wise. And then he just eventually, and that lasted about a year, and you know, and he just eventually died. Sadly. Poor Bertie. I mean, he didn't even live as long as his parents. Edmund's paternal grandparents, who were 70 and 71 respectively when they died. So he lived longer than his late father and his paternal grandparents. Impressively. You know, for Edmund, you know, who suffered a severe heart attack at the age of 50 and was forced into retirement at a much, much earlier age than that of his late father, you know, and even David was like, you know, it's impressive, you know, he was about 50 odd when he had the heart attack and lived to be, over 70 after having the quadruple bypass fitted in it and the esophagus damaged in the aftermath of the bypass surgery. I mean, that was an astonishing thing about Edmund, you know, how he could survive that long. You know, I don't think he was, you know, but it was very unlikely he could have lived to 80 or 90 or 100, but I think he could have just about made 75 had it not been for thrombocythemia and the effect it had on him. But, you know, part of the problem is you could be walking around with anything and not knowing you have it, and then you're diagnosed, and then you realise it's manifested beyond your expectations. That's what could happen, sadly, in one's life. You know. But you know, I mean, I can remember the day when Edmund said, the day of Edmund's death. It was a great hurry. I mean, because my dad took my brother and I, and then my auntie and her then partner, we all went over. I can remember my dad, he broke down in tears when he was opening up about the loss of Edmund, and then he stopped, the tearful moment reduced, and the next thing you know, my heart sank just so much. I was devastated and just in tears. I was just nothing but in tears and devastated that very day, you know. I mean, honestly, I mean, all of us, all my family, including me and my brother, obviously, I mean, we were just so, I was just shattered. I was devastatingly shattered that very day, and I mean, I couldn't talk about it for a long time. I mean, I could definitely say that I was very upset, but I couldn't open up about the loss of Edmund in full, you know. And the final years of Edmund were quite a worry. I mean, it was no wonder why my grandmother was concerned for his health, especially come before the start of 2018. Myself and my auntie, we were going to spend the New Year on the Isle of Wight. But my grandmother advised against having visitors because she needed to keep an eye on Edmund, because he was not eating very much, and still wasn't by Easter of 2018, and by this point he was aging quite quickly. He was already aging quite quickly after turning 70. Spring 2017, he would have been nearly 6 months after turning 70 years of age, and he visibly aged, to probably looking like a man in his, probably about 83 I thought he looked, instead of 70. And then a year later, at the age of 71, April 2018, he was probably looking about 5 years older, about 5 or 6 years older, something like that, probably closer to 90. You know, he was visibly, you know, he'd lost weight, he'd clearly lost weight, I think really before his 72nd birthday. But we did not find out about his weight loss or his thrombocythemia diagnosis until about 19 months before his death. You know, the weight loss, his astonishing weight, some of you would be surprised, at only 5 feet 4 in height, because he was quite short, Edmund was, at 5 feet 4, he only weighed 8 stone 2 pounds, or 114 pounds, just a couple of months shy of his 72nd birthday. I mean, and that was less than what I was back then. He had lost, he visibly had lost weight and visibly aged. And he aged even very quickly again, to probably looking like in his very latter 80s, that April of 2018, to probably looking about 95, something like that, by a couple of months shy of his 72nd birthday. I could remember seeing him, and I looked at him, I was like, oh my goodness, I was like, wow. I was like, Edmund is looking very frail, poor man. And then he walked off to go about his stuff, but he was alright, you know, we just said hello, but he knew I didn't mean to offend him, but yeah, he never would have come under the impression I offended him. I think he went probably to get himself a cup of tea or something, and then my grandmother walked into the living room, and I can remember I stood up from the sofa, I walked over to her, I just looked at her and sighed, and I was like, I can't believe it. I really can't. I was like, I think, is it me? I was like, is it me, or has Edmund lost weight? And then that was when my grandmother did tell me about what weight he was, when he went down to 8 stone 2, 114 pounds. I was like, not only has he lost weight, but he's aged since I last saw him. He's really aged. He sort of held fairly steady with his ageing throughout 2017 until about sometime after his 71st birthday, and it was like, and then the year later, 2019, he'd aged. He was aging almost constantly, you know. And then the following year, that August 2019, you know, I had never seen a man, only in his 70s, I had never seen somebody, you know, so frail in all their lives. I had seen frail people, but it was, in a way, it was particularly heart-wrenching seeing the deterioration of Edmund. I'd never seen anybody deteriorate so quickly or go downhill so quickly for health, you know, and it was that August of 2019 where, you know, I just knew that he was not gonna survive a great many more years, and you know he had again lost weight, having gone down to 7 stone 8, 7 stone 8, just a couple of months shy of his what was, but we didn't know, but what didn't know was going to be his then final 73rd birthday. He'd lost half a stone lighter than what he was the following year. More than half a stone, 8 pounds lighter. He'd visibly aged again, probably looking about 10 years older the following year than he did the other year. He wasn't able to do the long walks. He could just about wander around the Isle of Wight Haven Street train story and bits of the Isle of Wight steam railway and just about ride it and all that, but he couldn't. But he was limited to what he could do, so basically I did. But I was worried and I worried about him, I kept my eye on him. If I wasn't taking any photograph pictures, I did try and make sure that he was with me so that, nothing happened to him, because he was increasingly frail by this point if I ever wanted to do my own thing and all that. But I was worried, and I remember actually talking to my mother on the phone. She was asking me how was Edmund, and I was like, I really don't think he's got very long left. I said, I think next year, I think next summer or possibly the summer after, I think next summer's going to be the last one. I said, or possibly the summer after if he's lucky. I mean, I was worried and distressed myself, as worried as my grandmother was. And obviously, and the stress and the worries my grandmother had, it aged her. I mean, she doesn't look as bad now as she did back in 2019, 2020, at the time of Edmund's funeral, but the stress and the worry she had from visibly aged her, unfortunately. I mean, she didn't look as bad as what he looked like, and she certainly doesn't look anywhere near as old as what Edmund would have looked like when he was 70, but obviously there was, and certainly the loss and the mourning, and obviously having never completely overcome the loss, it's obviously had an ageing effect as well as a mental side effect. So it was a very hard time, that August 2019, and obviously I ended up getting very ill with an awful chest infection, and come to think of it, I was nearly 2 stone lighter than the weight I am now, and I must have lost about 7-8 pounds when I had the chest infection, because I felt pretty fragile when I went to one of the famous art gallery museums in London with an old family friend of mine, and I had a lighter weight coat. I didn't have my blue coloured coat on, I had a yellow beige coat on, a shirt and cardigan, and I felt freezing cold, likely because of the weight loss. I eventually put the weight back on, as one can lose weight temporarily and get the weight back on, but probably took me about 5-6 weeks to get back to the 9 stone 4 pounds, something like that. And I was petite. I was a petite thing anyway back then. And it really wasn't until about 2021 when I got to what I currently am now, which is 11 stone, which is in the American and Canadian neck of the woods, 154 pounds. As most of you already know, because there's 14 pounds every stone. But it was a very hard time. And the time of Edmund's 73rd birthday, he was less than 7.5 stone. He went down to 102 to 103 pounds, from 106. He was just losing weight fast. After turning 73, we really didn't think he'd deteriorate that much. Eventually, after turning 73, he packed up with driving. And eventually he couldn't. He could only just walk to a bus stop and back. Because he was too weak. 103 pounds, and by this point, he couldn't have been much more than 5'3", 5'3.5", something like that. He'd visibly lost height, likely as a result of the toll the thrombocythemia took on him. We really didn't think he was going to have it terminally, because the doctor initially said he didn't have it terminally, but as it turned out he did have it terminally, and we only just found out that thrombocythemia was his cause of death after he died. And so that obviously I could never open this up for a long time until, you know, the very latest I could open this up was about 2023 at the very latest, but really it was about 2022, 2023, when I could open up about the latter days of Edmund, just before he died, you know. But the very last time I'd seen Edmund was just before the new year of 2020, and you know, he'd had a fall. He'd recently had a fall, had a bruise on his head. You know, he was partially bald, so you could see the bruise on the scalp mark, and a slight partial bruise mark near the centre of his head. And obviously he'd aged so much, you could tell the weight. And he wasn't, and we went to Newport together, but he really didn't walk very much. I mean, his body was obviously visibly thinner. His shirt and his jumper was obviously looking too big for him. His legs were probably about the size of my arms, which are not particularly big. They're fairly small arms, and his legs were probably about the size of my arms. And obviously his arms were about either the size of my arms or smaller. You know, he'd really lost a lot of weight, poor man. And I could really see something was seriously wrong. But we really did not expect him to go as soon as 2020, as soon as February of 2020. We really didn't. But the thing that we are happy for was that he did not have to go into a care home. Because I think if he was still alive now, or had he survived into this year, I think it's really quite likely I mean, I don't think he would have survived into 2024 after seeing him in 2019, but did what he looked like in 2019, but didn't think he'd go as soon as 2020. But I think had he survived into this year, he would have almost definitely had to have gone into a home. And he would have probably been confined to a scooter because he became very limited as to how far he walked, because he was very weak. Because he became just so weak eventually. And as a result of the excess weight loss. And he could just about do the long walks when he was just over 8 stone of weight. But I think it was a bit hard. It was harder for him. But we got through some long walks. But I worried about him doing it because he was just, you know, when he was 8 stone 2, shortly before his 72nd birthday, he could have passed for being a frail but active 103-year-old man. That's how I could have looked at him had I not known how old he was, or thought he was just any random man. I think he could have passed for being an active but frail-looking 103-year-old. That was my opinion. But when seeing him in 2019, I think he could have passed for being the oldest man in Britain. You know, I would have thought he was about 113, 114 when he was 72, 73. You know, he'd really gone that downhill. Poor man. I mean, I'm so sorry I had to share so much of it, you know. But it only took me, 2-3 years to really properly open up about this without getting emotionally invested. It was over time after his death I could only share bits of the loss and his final latter days. But if I did at the time of his death, or even a year after he died, you know, I would have gotten very, very upset and emotionally invested. I would have probably cried. No, I would have definitely cried back in 2020 and 2021 when I first met David if I'd spoken about Edmund's final latter days, you know. No, but now I can share it with him now without getting extremely upset and emotionally invested, but, you know. But obviously, as I said before, it was a big loss. You know. Yeah, I'm so sorry. But but now that we've done coverage of the final days of Edmund, that story, let's give it a thumbs up and congratulations to David himself for his incredible over 700 plus subscriber milestone. Well done, David. And I am sorry if the story of Edmund was too much. No, really I am. But our encountering and our eventual best friendship, it means to me more than you may realise, most sincerely in the world. And I couldn't be more fortunate to have a better best friend than you. I mean, do be assured I have many wonderful friends. I have got other best friends, but you are my #1 best friend. And I would certainly for those of you who have not seen David's content, I would certainly recommend you give it a good watch. You know. And one last thing for saying, and what David said that was so nice to me. David was like, your grandfather would be just so proud of you. And the way you honour him. And he was like, God bless you, mate. And, but you know, people can die, but we do hold our memories forever in our hearts and minds. Which is a very good sentimental philosophical saying when remembering our late relatives and late friends we were close to and all that. Because after all, there's another philosophical saying, nobody's ever really gone. And Edmund's captivated spirit will live on in the deepest soul depth of my heart for however long it continues to beat. Well done, David, on over 700 subscribers and your 700 plus and 760 plus, in fact, subscriber milestone. And may we wish you many more success and many more subscribers to come. Thanks all for watching, everybody. The link to David's channel, as I said before, will be found in the description below. Goodbye, and may your good wishes be bringing you great expectations of happiness. Well done, David, and congratulations on your subscriber milestone.